Welcome to eTeacher Plus for Pakistan. eTeacher Plus for Pakistan is an initiative of the Regional English Language Office at the US Embassy Islamabad to promote virtual teaching and learning. The program aims at providing many professional development opportunities to English language teachers and learners across Pakistan through global online courses, massive open online courses, webinar series, and then engaging the alumni in many productive activities. In Pakistan, the program is implemented by Evolution, and if you wish to share more information about the program, please feel free to visit www.evolution.com.pk/eteacher. Under the eTeacher Plus for Pakistan program, eTeacher Pakistan webinar series have been launched to provide alumni an opportunity to share the gained knowledge and resources with the wider audience. Today, we will be talking about something very important as a part of eTeacher Pakistan webinar series 1.3, that is online assessments, challenges, and opportunities. To present on this topic, we have with us today Adeel Khalid. Adeel teaches academic writing at Foreman Christian College. He has graduated his MPhil degree in teaching English as a second language from Beacon House National University, Lahore. He is an eTeacher alumnus who has completed online courses and MOOCs including critical thinking skills in ESL, assessment, formative and summative practices in language teaching, advanced TESOL practitioner, and integrating technology in language teaching. All these courses have been sponsored by the Regional English Language Office at the US Embassy Islamabad. So let's talk about the objectives of today's webinar. In the next 25 minutes, Adeel is going to walk you through the concept of digital assessments. He is going to review some of the strategies that you can use in your online teaching and learning to evaluate the performance of your learners. He is further going to tell you how you can track the progress of the learners, which keeps them motivated. Also, he is going to talk about his own teaching practices that he has been implementing in his virtual classrooms to effectively assess his students online. So thank you so much, Adeel, for joining us today. Over to you.
Hello everyone, I am Adeel Khalid. I hope you all are doing well. So today's webinar is going to explore some of the opportunities, and I hope that you will be able to overcome some of the challenges into your online teaching and assessment practices. Assessment is all of the methods and the tools that we as educators use to measure students' educational needs. So students' educational needs are important in order to employ what assessment criteria and what assessment strategies that you are going to assess them and how you're going to assess them. So you sort of assess students' learning over a passage of time, a specific period of time, and also you take care of the students' learning progress as well. Not only traditional test, it does not only include traditional tests, it is a kind of overall pattern through which you sort of engage your students into make them more familiar that there are other ways of just traditional tests. So this webinar is going to talk about, and we'll be talking about some of the practices that will ask you to go beyond traditional tests. And assessment can be both formative and summative. Usually there is a misunderstanding that only traditional tests are considered as assessment practices, but it is not so. So formative is in nature is something that you give them feedback, you assign them a task, they return it to you, and then you provide them with the feedback. So based on your feedback, they improve and then they revise the version, and then they return it to you. But summative, whatever the assignment is given, you consider that as a final assessment. So in formative, there is a room for improvement, whereas in summative there is not really a room, but what is the major difference is that we usually call formative as a learning for assessment, and summative we call it learning of assessment. And summative is usually conducted by the end of the year or by the end of the term. All right, moving on onwards, it's going online. This is how usually it depicts a kind of scenario that what it is going online. Sometimes we are working on our laptops, sometimes we are working on our tablets, sometimes we're working with our smartphones. But again, sometimes we are working manually on our notebooks, and a cup of tea is there and sticky notes are there. So going online sometimes, and I believe always it looks a little bit messy, but unless you do have the clear strategy and the technique at hand, how you're going to do it, and why do you need to do it, and what are the different ways through which you can go online and having a purpose behind that. So let's move on to the cycle of online assessment. Online assessment cycle starts with, I would say, planning, because this is an entry point as well. So on planning stage, you basically devise and derive and think about what assessment strategy that you are going to employ for this particular objective. So you set your objective, learning objectives, and based on those learning objectives, number one, that you will design your instructions. And based on your instructions, you think of what are the online formative assessment practice that you need to do it for your particular lesson, and then you reflect on your practices. So this is an online ongoing cycle basically, in which planning comes first, then the instruction, and then online formative assessment technique or the criteria that you give them, and then reflection comes in. I don't believe that reflection is the fourth part of it, but I think it's as you can see that it overlaps. Every circle is overlapping online assessment cycle, because every step has its own holistic importance. And of course, reflection can come in during the planning stage. Reflection, you do reflect when you deliver your instructions. I usually reflect when I design my instructions even. So it's an ongoing continuum. It's an ongoing learning process. It's an ongoing sort of a cycle that may overlap, and that gives you room for reflection as well. And I do believe that there is always a room for improvement. As an educator, I do need that there's a lot of room for improvement, and I do believe that this is what makes us on the go. All right, Ji, moving on, online assessment. In online assessment, we use technology to facilitate and improve performance by creating, we use, and managing. So creating, using, managing appropriate technological processes and resources. So we will be using technological processes. The process will be technology oriented. The resource will be technology oriented, and we do use that for assessment purposes. This is what the whole this is what the whole system of doing online and conducting online assessment. For doing online assessment, we need to reinvent our approach. We need to reconsider ourselves as educators. We need to reconsider ourselves. How do we teach? What do we teach? And what level do we teach? And most importantly, we do need to consider and reinvent probably our ways of interacting with the 21st century students. Because what I experience through my teaching as well, through my practices as well, that students are far more tech savvy than we as educators are. So probably on this part, we need to learn from them as well, something from them. So that's the reason that we need to reinvent and continue reinventing your approach, continue reinventing your teaching style, and of course, continue reconsider your ways of assessing your students' learning. So it's an incubator of exploration where you've been given a task and you have the whole map to sort of explore. And map is always has a kind of intriguing factor. So that gives you whole room for exploration. Um, so you continue doing that exploration part, but at the same time, you sort of do an experimentation as well. So this experimentation and this exploration keeps you on the go if you um, continue reinvent your teaching style and continue improve your way of learning and incorporating different ways into your teaching. How to conduct online assessment? How to conduct? It's a self-reliant mode of learning. Nobody is going to come and dictate you what you ought to do, how you ought to do. It's a self-directed way of assessment. You are the leader of your students of the online assessment. You are the sort of you will take the lead, but you are more like a facilitator as well. But for that you need to be self-motivated. If you are self-motivated, then you will be able to cascade and communicate that motivation to your students as well. Self-reliance comes in, but at the same time self-directed learning is important. You are going to direct your students towards a certain, in order to achieve that particular goal, to a certain level of understandings. For doing that, you need to rely on yourself. You need to believe that you can do that. Then you will be able to achieve what you desire to do that. All right, G, it promotes learning. Online assessment promotes learning, and provided the fact that you give clear expectations. So it's very important that you ask your students that this is what you convey your expectations to your students. So this is a very powerful way of sort of conveying your motivation strategy, because what I usually do in my teaching is that I let my students know that if you are going to learn this particular concept, this is how this concept is going to help you in your real life experiences or in your real life exposure. So probably you need this skill in order to survive into your real life scenario. So this is the one way of keeping them motivated to complete the task or learning that particular skill. So you're going to not just direct them, but you also convey clear instructions and clear expectations that why I do expect my students to learn this, and what benefit do they get after learning this. So it's a kind of self-directed, but at the same time it's a guided discovery as well, where you guide your students towards a destination. Online assessment means measuring higher order thinking. So you are going to not just in considering the fact of and knowing the fact that you are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. So Bloom's taxonomy, evaluating, creating, reflecting the higher upper level of higher order thinking through online assessment. Your aim should be that you are going to engage students higher order thinking. Online assessment helps in finding a pattern in students' achievement and error as well. So wherever there is an error, you sort of appreciate, never ever really discourage them outrightly, but I would suggest that give them a pat at their back and ask them to improve in the next term, and give them room for improvement as well, always. So it will definitely gives you it will definitely gives you a sort of pattern. It will help you to identify that pattern in students' achievement, and then the error comes in. You need to rectify that error as an instructor, as an educationist. How to conduct online assessment? Step number one: be confident. You need to be confident. You need to be firm on your groundings. Then you will be able to conduct online assessments. Step number two, be prepared. As I said earlier, if you have planned your lesson effectively, if you are clear in your instructions, if you are clear in your expectations, then you will be able to drive the clear assessment strategy. So for that, you need to be prepared. Step number three, test your tech beforehand. So whatever you are going to ask them to do, please, it's important that you know exactly which software or which app application is beneficial for them, and how they are going to get that benefited for themselves as well. For that, you need to test it beforehand. You need to know, and you need to break those instructions into simpler steps. Step number one, step number two, step number three, step number four, and don't really expect that students will be able to know it automatically. You have to actually explain them. You have to actually give them a roadmap. You have to give them um, the criteria. So for that, it's important that you test your tech, and testing your tech comes in at the planning stage. So you need to plan effectively your lessons, and I repeat and I reiterate. Step number four, have fun. As an educator, with my experience, I learned this, and I think it's important that whatever learning students are having, it's important that you need to not let them take out this fun element. Please, I would advise you even that as an educators that we need to consider this fun element as an important part of learning. It can be the exciting process of guiding them to the pathway can be the fun itself, or exploring with different types of assessment can be the fun element as well, because probably they have been into in-person assessments, they have been into traditional types of assessments, so for the first time they are doing it. So do not take this element away from them. And I think we educationists should be having fun in designing more productive tasks as well. When to use online assessment? Uh, you can use it essays, papers, projects, writing assignments, presentations, exhibits, performances, portfolios of student work, artwork, internships. So these are the ways where you can conduct online assessments. Google Sites, it's a very effective way of using this type of assessment for your portfolio assessments and projects. If you're doing a project which requires a lot of work and a group work, you can ask them to sort of create Google sites for their target audience, and then they can publicize this. I remember once I did a project with my primary year students in which they become the travel agents, and they ask their potential customers to fly to the moon because they thought that Earth is no more a safe place to live in. So in that, I remember they created a website of their own using Google Sites, and the response was tremendous. The many visitors visited their sites and were very interested in traveling with them to the moon. So this is how it is. So you can also include it and incorporate into portfolio assessment, and gives the students a very holistic way of how they can project themselves and their work, and to reach out to the larger audience. Google Forms is a great way to conduct surveys. It can be beneficial for you to get feedback from your students. You can have quizzes on using Google Forms, and I'll give you a glimpse of how one of my students, uh, created a survey. This is just one screenshot of that. It says challenges faced in online education. So it's an easy way of doing it. It's not that difficult. All right, this is something interesting. I used Excel to assess my students, and I use Excel format, Google Excel sheet, and this is how it usually looks like. So this is the serial number. I start with that, and then roll number, name, and then I usually employ this kind of use these kinds of Google forms, Excel forms for my end of the term, but at the same time I use it for team building assessment. So this is a very effective way of, like, you can use as many colors, you can you can add as many tabs as you want, and you can keep a track of your students' progress. You can keep them in the loop as well. You will be able to know that students, whether they have completed that task or not, what was their previous level of performance, or the understanding uh, what went wrong, and you can of course keep it updated. It depends on the quality of the work. At the same time, it depends on your way of doing an assignment. So I usually use Google um, Excel sheet for my students, keeping a track of my students criteria. So this is like these many students have not submitted their work. This I just give you a glimpse of how I do it, but I'm still in the process of evaluating my students' progress. And of course, if you set and you know the basics of Excel sheet, you will know that how it you can add percentages and how it actually works automatically. Google Docs is a great way of for writing assignments. You can ask students to sort of indulge and engage into collaborative writing tasks. And what is so interesting in Google Doc is usually when I ask my students for collaborative writing tasks, they can add as many email IDs as they want. So, for instance, if the whole group, the group of 4 people are working for the Google Doc. So what I usually ask them, one student uh, can be the topic sort of facilitator. The second person can write the introduction. The third person can write the middle part, and the fourth person can conclude. And the one person I can assign the looking up to the overall mechanics of how it works. And so what I do is I usually ask my students to add my email ID as well, so I can keep a track of their progress as well. So it has an additional window of chatting. So it offers, and students can chat. Meanwhile, so chatting means they sort of plan effectively for their what they're going to write. So this is how Google Doc works really well. So this is one of the examples that I am writing. I'm sure right now I'm displaying. So what I do is that, for instance, the introduction part is highlighted in yellow. The middle part, which just talks about the article that they're working on, is highlighted in sort of green, and then purple is the argument, the basic argument. So I ask my students to also highlight it and use different colors. So if they use different colors, it of course it gives me a glimpse that this part is done by that student, or this part talks about this particular thing. So it does not really give me it does not take really too much time for me to sort of like when it comes to checking and marking their work. And you can ask them to do it as well. And I hope it proves to be beneficial for your classes as well. All right, G, moving on to the next instrument tool that I want you to get familiar with is a newspaper club by Arthur, and it is used for producing professional looking newspapers with your class. Basically, the basic level of this particular website is available free of cost. So you can ask your students to sort of do a group work, and they can create um, um, a newspaper. For instance, newspaper, you can use it for different purposes. For instance, if you have given them a project on scientific discovery, they can publicize, and they can um, look for different newspaper icons, and through which you can enhance their newspaper literacy information. And you can also ask them to sort of uh, assign different portion of newspaper to different students. And this is how a professional looking newspaper can be generated using this app. Socratic Socrative, again, is a very powerful tool for performative assessment tool that helps teachers and learners to assess understanding and progress in real time, in classroom through the use of quizzes, questions, reflection questions. Answer Garden, to elicit brief answers from the respondents. It helps you to create, share, answer, and manage topic questions. Quizlet is again a very powerful way of, is a very useful app application. It helps you to sort of identify and gives you 7 different options. The number one is the flashcard. If you have taught one of the concept to your students, so it offers you different vocabulary, and through flashcards you can review different terms and terminologies with them. It gives you learning in learning stage. It gives you a personalized study mode, and students can adopt to their personalized studies mode as their personal choices works in. So it gives you options, different options are available. Write fill in blank style, spell, it dictates. So Quizlet has an option of spelling, and test, an easy way to quiz yourself, and you can of course test your quiz as many times as you like to. Match, a game-based game, sort of where the matching columns sort of steps in. And Gravity, a level-based game where the student must answer correctly before being hit by an asteroid. So it's an interesting way of using Quizlet. And some of the concepts that and the levels of the concept are usually available online, so you don't have to redesign from the scratch. You can tailor, and you can use the ready-made material even if you happen to find an appropriate resource there. Skype is a great way for like virtual tours. There are many museums around the world. They do offer virtual tours these days since the pandemic. COVID-19 has stepped in. So virtual tours is a great way to engage into historical projects and give glimpse of to the students of the different perspectives of history through different museums around the world. So virtual tours, you can let them have engage in dialogues, presentations, face-to-face, viva voce, and even Skype. I use it for, like, if I happen to interact with, I'll put my students into an interaction mode with another class which is happening across another continent or across the globe. So this is again a very useful application that helps you to connect. Moodle is that I definitely very powerfully I endorse, and I think it's a way for you to. It gives you a lot of variety of options that you can um, assess your students. For instance, you can see that I have already, this is a glimpse that this is how it works on my portal. So instead of just going week wise, I decided to break this chunks into uh, topic wise. Number one is ice breaking, and then moving on to equality index. This is the course that I'm teaching right now. It's writing and communication. So choosing a topic, we covered Millennium Development Goals, annotated bibliography, reading week, topic proposal. And at that, if you happen to see um, at the left hand side, you can see that it gives you different options for competences, grades, ice breaking activity. It's the same, but it allows you to add variety. It allows you to even you can add video. And since HEC has asked you to ask given has given us another option of blue button. So Moodle is free of cost. You can use that. It has different options to explore, and the more options you can explore, the more varieties there. You can have you can also share file and folders with your students. You can there is an option of having an informal discussion through the forum. So you can also use that even on Moodle. Rubystar is a way is a website that allows you to create your customized rubric for every task that you teach. It's an online resource, and it, of course, rubric plays a very pivotal role in assessment. So it can help you in creating that particular rubric, considering whatever the concept that you are teaching. Kahoot is a game-based assessment. Again, it offers provides with multiple questions. Wizard.me, it built and helps you to create online digital worksheets. You can create worksheets and then you can send an email to your students. Some of the worksheets are already available. You can improvise on that, even you can build your own, but it's a great way of building your interactive worksheets. So on the whole, every vision takes time. You have to analyze what went right or wrong. Sometimes teaching is just trial and error. It's just like this sand glass, which is like filling out, but at the same time, there is a lot of room for you to reflect on your teaching practices.
Thank you, Adil, for joining us today. It was indeed a pleasure to know more about online assessments from your eye. We appreciate your time, effort, and resources to make this possible. To the audience, thank you for joining us. If you have comments, questions, and/or suggestions, please feel free to write us on eteacher@evolution.com.pk. We will continue to bring out these webinars to you every Monday. So keep looking this space of Relo Pakistan Facebook and Relo Pakistan YouTube channel to learn more from the eTeacher alumni across Pakistan. Happy teaching and learning.